Welcome to the Decode Podcast with Elias Malfovan, Daniel Stanfill, and Sean Kincaid.
Welcome to the Decode. This episode, we are going to be talking about different ways to set up your screen printer. What are the optimal parameters to be, or what are the optimal ways to set up and define your printer? I think one of the first things might be speed. Do you have a dedicated speed that you always run your screen printer at, Sean?
50 or 100, depending.
50 or 100, and that's just a random number. 50%, 50 horsepower, 50 psi, 50
M/S.
Irrelevant.
mm/s.
Yeah.
Millimeters per second. That is correct. So that's 50, and is that based on? I'm guessing, if I had to, that is based on the very precise window that they give you as a paste manufacturer, right? They help you dial it in right from the start, reading their data sheet. You know exactly what speed to use, correct?
No, that's the default setting my printer came with. So
I think what Daniel was alluding to is that if you look at a paste manufacturer's suggested settings, it's like between 50 and 3,000 millimeters per second. It's just like the biggest range you've ever seen, and it's completely unhelpful.
That is what I was looking for, but I expected the one who was also in assembly and always reading those data sheets and having felt that pain before to recognize that. But
no, it was during the reflow oven process. Looking at their data sheets for that that one was, to me, was like, this is insane. The windows here are so big. I probably even was like, I'm not even gonna look at that section. It's crazy. So, but yeah, I tend to have good luck with the 50, to be honest with you.
do you know how much pressure you're putting on with the speed at 50?
So for me, it depends on the width of the actual squeegee I'm going to use. But for example, like the 350 millimeter squeegee is 7 pounds. Might be in kilos. I don't know. It's a 7.0. That's the number I set it to. And then
I think the machine does display it in kilograms.
if I have to up that up, it's usually because it's an indication that my blade's usually bent. So usually if I have to
That's
like up
interesting.
that to get a nice streak across of it, like, completely wiped, to me it's a process indicator. Take a look at your blades.
What I've noticed is if you increase the speed, you also have to increase the pressure, or else it really changes the way it performs.
What else?
No
have you
agreement.
noticed?
Well, some of the other things that you can talk about is like the snap-off speed. Is that a parameter that you've ever played with?
Only once or twice.
So I want to jump in there because you're using the term snap-off speed, but I think maybe what you're referring to is separation speed, right? Because in the history of screen printing, snap-off was a term that was used to describe the distance between the substrate and the screen or stencil that was printing, whereas with stencil printing, we're doing contact printing, right? So there is no snap-off distance.
Yeah, that's probably similar to how I've in the past accidentally used destacker and unloader interchangeably when they're actually different pieces of equipment. So I need to get better at that.
Print gap, there's that as well. I've used that before.
Yeah, separation.
Expand on that.
So, sure, yeah, go ahead. Print gap. How did you use print gap?
I basically needed to take my 4 millimeter stencil and make it like a 6. So I just changed the Z height pretty much basically at that point and added more paste.
So you're off contact printing.
Yeah.
That didn't induce too much bleeding or bridging or anything, as Elias was clearly afraid of.
Well, I mean, this was a one-piece prototype, and
Okay.
they gave it to us with no rails, and there was solder that needed to get on the edges, so we had to use a carrier for it. It was gigantic, and then the lip inside of it, of course, it's not an actual rectangle they give me. It's like a cutout. So then it was
So
just a nightmare all around.
when you say rails, you're talking about the borders that go around. Sometimes, because a lot of times the customer who receives a finished product is never going to see the borders that were a part of the fabrication process, right? If you de-panel it before you give it to them, they're not even aware of it typically. So a lot of people might not know what you're talking about. But for automation, you can't have components that are too close to the edge of the board, or else they will get messed up along the conveyance. So you need edges that are part of scrap material, waste material that get broken off after they've made it through all of your automation. And when customers don't provide you, if it's a board that the customer provided for you and you weren't given the luxury of getting fabbed yourself, then if they didn't give you those rails, as you're saying, how did you deal with that? You had to create a carrier that it dropped down into so that you did have the separation and you could ride along the conveyance. Is that correct?
Yeah, I mean it was 125 thick carrier we routed down into an 062 lip, so that way when the boards sit on each other, you meet flush with the 125. So yeah.
Don't you frequently use 093 to make a carrier for 062, or do you have to go thicker than that?
It's all we had in house at the time, so that's what we used. My worry with stuff like that, right, is if I wasn't running that and I didn't know the thickness of that carrier, you run the risk of the operator not programming the correct Z height, right? So they might go by 1.6 millimeter, 1.7 millimeter, their standard 062. But in reality, that thing's like 2.17, I think, is 093 or something higher like that. So, and then you're just going to slam that sucker in there, you know what I'm saying? Or vice versa, you're going to drop it where there's not enough paste on there. So, yeah. What about you, Daniel? What do you modify to dial in your print parameters?
One of the big ones is how often you use your under stencil cleaner. So I think the way Orac has described it to us, you should try to use it as minimally as possible. And I think the way he suggested doing it would be that you would run without using it until you start to see any deterioration in the print. So as soon as the quality starts to drop, you take note of how many boards was that in between wipes, and then you change that, drop that frequency by 1 and see how it goes. And if it was, say, if it's 8 prints in between wipes before it starts to deteriorate, then you probably want to set it to 6 or 7 and make sure that you always stay on the good side of that, but not excessively, because I think he also says you shouldn't actually use your first print after it has been cleaned. When we're running production, I don't have the operators stop. If it's cleaned, I don't say like, oh, let it run one and then clean that board first, or hey, hold on, cover that board and then put paper over it first, so that that first board after it got cleaned doesn't get run in production. We don't see I've never seen a huge issue, an issue of any kind, where there's a noticeable difference in the prints immediately after the stencil got cleaned. Have you noticed? Does your SPI tend to trigger more boards immediately after a cleaning? Have you noticed?
So what I have noticed with that is a failure in a different part of the actual printer. So we buy the thin frame, and then you screw a frame onto it, and then it's almost like an adapter that allows you to use the thin frame as a tube frame. What we noticed, though, was
which takes a space saver frame that's a 1/2 inch thick and makes it a traditional inch thick stencil frame, correct?
Correct. Yeah. And
In the case of a 23 by 23, that's correct. If it's a 29 by 29, then you're talking about 1.5 inches overall profile. So the space saver's 1/2 inch and the adapter's 1 inch thick.
Okay.
Yeah. I have a big blue one for the 2929. I hate 2929. I won't run it. I tell people all the time. But for example, though, is we noticed that the stencil would move a little bit, right? After the cleaner, and then we started looking into it, and the process engineer noticed, look at how much I can shake this thing on the table, right? And it was wobbling a little bit. And then so once we tightened it down, we actually put like a new socket set, basically. We bought one dedicated just to make sure it's socketed down tight. And ever since then, that issue has gone away. Because we were wiping either, depending on the complexity of the board, sometimes after every 25 prints, sometimes every 100 prints, sometimes every 50 prints. And then if it's some crazy fine pitch stuff, maybe every 5 or 2 or 1, depending on the quantity we're running. So when you're running that and a little skew, it sometimes can get noticed, when it prints again. Because I'm sure we're running the same software on the speed print, but your initial scan of a print uses not only the fiducials that you set, right, if you have them, but it'll also use the actual aperture layout of maybe a different types of part, right? So it'll scan the board as well as the fids on the stencil, and then it goes back and does it again, right? You have to like calibrate, optimize, calibrate, right? Or really optimize, calibrate, optimize. Your first one will be like almost 4 scans. So if that's off after you ran it from there, then in the next time just picks up the 2, it can affect it. That make any sense?
It makes sense to me. I was trying to figure out how to package it for it to make sense to everyone who doesn't have our brand.
Yeah, like you can see the images in my head as I'm describing them, right? Like the board, fid, right? And then it zooms out to the actual fid part of it, right? The fid camera view on the board, and then goes to the fid of the actual stencil camera.
Yeah.
Whereas when you're running production, it's just going to pick up the 2 fids and then go boom, because it's already in the master alignment. Because the stencil shouldn't move after that point.
Yeah, because what it's done is it's used the apertures that you programmed and the fiducials, and once it's calibrated and aligned the apertures on the board, or the pads on the board to the apertures on the stencil, and it's happy with that alignment, and then it finds the fiducials within that, and then it knows these are where my fiducials are based in reference to where the apertures for the fiducial location were determined, and it just uses the fiducials only instead of the apertures as well as the fiducials from that point forward. So if there's any variance at all in the way it gets set up, it can kind of hurt you moving forward.
It's a 10-second extra step almost, maybe even longer than that, your first scan. So, you can eliminate that if after it's aligned in the first place, because technically the table shouldn't move again. But we were noticing, because that frame wasn't tied down, that it was affecting it. And we picked that up.
Yeah.
On SPI.
So one of the other things that we should talk about is board support, because I don't think Chrys Shea would ever talk to us again if we did an episode on screen printing and didn't bring up board support. And if there's one thing I don't want to do, it is upset Chrys Shea. So the general rule is you can't have too many board supports, provided they aren't in any damaging locations where there are components or something. But if you don't have the proper amount of support, those blades are coming down, as we talked about, with quite a fair amount of pressure. As the squeegee blades come across that stencil and over the board, if you have any areas that aren't properly supported, that could actually have a pretty significant impact on volume of paste in different locations, right? So proper board support is critical for the quality of your prints and the longevity of your stencil even.
Yeah, because if they're not properly supported, that pressure is going to cause deflection, right? So not only are you going to see a variance in the volume, because now is the board in contact with the stencil, but also your print definition is going to suffer significantly, right? We've discussed many times the importance of gasketing to a good printing process, and when the two aren't attached to each other, there is no gasket. So you'll see, oftentimes wet bridging or various different print issues that can occur from a poorly supported board. So it's huge.
Daniel, do you use magnetic or the pneumatic ones?
Magnetic. And if I could change one thing about what we did when we ordered our screen printer, is I would remove the dispensing feature, and I would have spent that money towards the automatic pin place, automatic board support. Because if you've got the automatic support, it just knows, according to your CAD, where all the components are. You literally don't even have to physically set support ever. It's just automatic. It's just the board support on a one-sided or two-sided board is always exactly where you need it. It's not even set it and forget it. It's just forget it. It's just that easy.
Yeah, because especially with the magnetic pins, that's what we run. I got the pneumatic sent to me. I got a trial. I got a 1 month trial to see if I like it or not. But with the magnetic pins, it's super dangerous to put underneath a double-sided assembly. We don't do it. I don't do it. It's just too dangerous.
Now
you're.
So what do you do in lieu of?
Yeah, what do you mean?
I run it with.
You don't
pins.
support it?
Yeah. 100%.
What?
Yeah.
What? Sean.
What do you think happens?
So
What do you think happens?
Well,
I don't know if we can
everything
recover from this.
Can you still be friends? Is that what you're saying?
What do you think
Yeah,
happens?
I don't know.
It might be over.
Pins?
Could be it.
What do you think happens when you run without pins? It pastes just fine. Just fine.
Oh boy.
So why ever use them on a one-sided assembly? What's the point?
It'll definitely help. It'll definitely help, but it's not going to make a point where it's going to all right. So you guys raise your hand in this room right now if you got an SBI to validate running it without board support. Go ahead, Elias, Daniel. I've seen the results.
Do you realize how many industry titans, living and past, are cringing right now? Those in the ground are rolling over in their graves.
Sean,
those still with us are
you're going to look in the camera right now and tell Chrys Shea you don't use board supports on any double-sided assembly on the second side. You're going to tell Chrys Shea that to her face.
I, Sean Kincaid, in 4.5 years of assembling circuit boards, have never used board supports on a double-sided assembly.
You are a braver man than I. Even if that were true, I wouldn't admit it. Goodness.
This is not by choice. This is not by choice. This is about fear. The fear of hurting another component that's already assembled on the bottom side.
Do you have the narrower pointed, the tapered pins where it comes to a really fine point, or just the big blunt ones?
I got a big blob, dude.
All right. Even so.
Okay.
Surely, when you are setting up a job, you know the difference between the tooling tab and the inspection tab, right?
Yeah.
So when you're setting up your tooling tab, you load the image of the CAD. You load the image so that it presents it to you at what? What are you shaking your head about so far? Where am I? I haven't even started describing it yet.
In my printer?
Yes.
I don't load no CAD file.
What?
Of course you do.
What are you talking about?
How do you align the stencil to the board without a CAD file?
You drive to the fiducial you want and you create it.
Sure. And how does the screen printer know where the fiducial is in relation to any of the openings? Through the CAD file.
It doesn't have to. There's no CAD file.
What are you talking about? Sean.
You go to create.
We can't air this, dude. I won't let you do this yourself.
No, this has to air. No, this has to air.
You'll go out of business in a week.
Sean.
There's no CAD file.
I'm going to sound broken. I'm going to need producer Paul to take out about 40 of the 73 Seans I've just said. But Sean, when you're setting up a new job, it has to know how big the board is in relation to where it's going to go to hit board stops. It needs to know where the vision needs to go to be looking for things. It needs to know how far away the apertures are from the. You have to line up. How do you mirror?
You type in board X length, board Y length, Z height.
That's a start. That's the first tab. Sure.
That's it.
Then you go to the vision.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Drive.
And you say
your fiducial one.
You don't first hit the tab that says use Gerber.
No, never. I've never once done that.
Is that actually a possibility?
Why would you?
It has to be if that's what he's saying. But
why? I've printed 01005s with fantastic results.
Do you want a cookie? Okay,
well, I've never used the CAD data. It's like you're acting like this is crazy. Why would I take an extra step to put that in there when it's not necessary?
We're gonna need Matt Argris to validate what you're saying when we talk to him.
Okay.
Because he'll be able.
Never once loaded a Gerber into my speed printer. Never once. Never once. No CAD data. Nothing. Just
so I'm
X, Y, Z.
I'm at a loss right now. Other than that explains why you wouldn't feel safe using the tooling, because you're just blindly placing it at that point. You don't have. So then that's why you didn't understand the laser guided tooling placement, because you've never followed that prompting or used that portion of it. It might not even exist on the 700 in your generation or whatever. All right, so the way it works on mine is you have
Allegedly.
When you go to the vision tab, you have use Gerber. You pull in the Gerber and you show it. This is the part of the Gerber that I want you to go to for aperture 1, and this is where I want you to go for aperture 2. This is where I want you to go for the fiducials. And then you show it. This is the portion of you bring the board in, you show it on the CAD. You highlight an area and you're like, this is the area I want you to look at. And then it goes roughly to that area on the board. And then you tell it, make alignment, and it tells you, pick that spot on the CAD, and you touch the corner you click on the corner of a pad on the CAD, and it says, all right, now hit that same spot on the board. You go click on that on the board on the vision spot. It tells you, now the X and the Y has been adjusted by this or that. Okay, so anyway, after you've done that, you do that on ours you have the inspection tab, and that's you want that Gerber to look as it looks to you. You want the top-down view to look as it looks to you physically when you're holding the board. But when you go to the tooling tab, you want it to be the first side mirror imaged like it actually will be when you physically take the board and flip it over to run the second side. So it gives it the CAD, it gives it the physical placement of where the components from the first side are actually going to be when the board is rotated and flipped to do the second side. So then you tell it, okay, I want to put my tooling pins here. You drag and drop them wherever there are not components, and then the laser comes until it points, and you put the pin where the laser hits the top of the pin and tells you, and it just goes through this series where
Are you lying to me right now? I feel like you're making this up.
No, this is going to sound so standard to everyone else ever. Like So
you're telling me
this is the cheap option. This is the cheap option.
Hold on. You're telling me there's a laser that comes down that tells you.
Yes, dude. Yes, and that's not even the cool thing. The cool thing does it by itself. It goes and finds those areas and just pops them up.
You clearly never watched my videos, bro, because I made that video.
You did not make that video.
I did.
You did not make that video.
I at least thought about it.
There's no way. Dude, that sounds amazing. Okay, well, if I had that feature, sure. I would probably play some. But no, everything you're saying, like, I have like 6 operators at my shop that would just be like, this guy living in fantasy world talking about lasers? Oh, yeah, just put it here, yeah. Like, what? What? No, I don't have anything like that. I gotta slide the board out and hope that my magnets are in the right spot. I don't have no laser system telling me where to put them. No. That's crazy to me. That sounds cool. I like that feature. That sounds cool. Is a new one like that too then? The P7? Yeah?
Yeah, the cheap version.
Wow.
That's the poor man's version. You should just use the auto support.
Well, no, I got this new thing where I guess it's
the pneumatic
down. Yeah, and these little pins pop up, and then just puts a nice little amount of pressure on it, and then if it feels anything, it just doesn't come all the way up right there.
You talked about that a little bit in our episode with Chrys, Shea, and Rev 1, so you haven't actually used it yet?
No, but now I'm kind of scared if I don't have the CAD data for it. Is it going to try to read up now? Because it's pneumatics.
No, that's the point. And if you recall, whatever, she said you got to make sure you got to be checking those and maintaining them, because if any paste gets in there and they get clogged up, now they won't respond. It'll stay stiff and stuck or whatever. So when it goes up, it won't give when there's a component there, and it'll really do some damage, or it'll stay down and won't release and come up to provide the pressure.
I brought that up to the company that sent me their stuff, and they're claiming their new product, you can get paste over it all day long, and it'll still work just fine. So I'm not.
They knew who they were talking to.
I'm not going to try that part out, but because I told them that I don't know, I run my life off fear, and then I hear that story, and I'm like, scared, right? Don't ever touch paste, right? Like, so, but they were saying that they made some modifications to their platform, and it's supposed to prevent that from happening. I don't know how.
So there's still
lasers to Are you? I don't want to swear right now, but I feel like
no.
I don't know how to say this, dude.
And that's fine. We'll leave that in. Producer Paul will put a clean little sunshine over your mouth or whatever when you said it. That's real. I'll make a video of it for you. Just like all the videos
real,
I've made,
and it's like
wanted for the package creation. It's real and what? Go ahead, Elias.
It's like 25-year-old technology.
Yeah.
It's not even anything.
Imagine if I have that option and I just never used it, and I was just...
Yeah, I can imagine it, actually. I could totally imagine kind of like that.
My pick and place, right? My 12-head, I programmed it as an 8-head, right? And so for X amount of whatever time I was running only 8 components, right?
So
it wouldn't be out of the ballpark, right, to be underutilizing one of my machines. So
hey, Sean, my truck, how there's those glass things like above the door? My truck's got a button, and if you press it, they go down. And then if you press it the other way, they go up, dude. No joke, bro.
I'm gonna call Matt right now. I'm gonna get Matt on the phone right now. Dude, they're claiming I got lasers that tells me where to put the pins.
Can you please actually do that right now? Call him right now, and as soon as he answers, tell him, hey, we're recording right now.
It's 11.
I think this would be good. This would be great for the episode if he answers.
It's
And if
11.
not, if he doesn't answer, we'll include it as a black mark on Europlacer's service record.
Hey, what's going on?
Hey, buddy. Hey, can you guys hear him?
I can hear him loud and clear.
Hey, Matt.
Loud and clear.
I got you on speaker with these cats.
Okay.
So when I was trained on my Europlacer, or my speed print, I never loaded a CAD. They never told me to load CAD data into it, right? Like, so all I did was I would go to board X size, board Y, right? Z height, right? Thickness.
Yep.
Then I'm going over to my vision system and I'm teaching aperture 1, right? And I'm teaching aperture 2. And then I'm loading the stencil and then I'm clicking optimize. Then I'm going to click calibrate and then I'm going to optimize again.
You don't need the last optimize, just one optimize and then calibrate.
I like it. I'm a little fancy. I'm a little extra.
Well, then that's absolutely fine too.
Okay. Now,
yeah. But as far as the importing the Gerber file goes, it doesn't give you any more print accuracy. It doesn't use it as part of the alignment model for it. It's really for like if you're doing tooling or you don't want to use the jog box or like the camera interface or measure to get to aperture 1 and aperture 2.
So basically, if you're lazy like Daniel, it'll help you out. But if you're a real man like me, you would do it the manly way.
Hey, can Matt hear me?
Way to say it for sure. I don't know if those are my words. Those are not my words necessarily.
Okay.
But,
Okay, Sean, ask Matt if, in his professional opinion, board support on side 2 matters at all.
I did hear that, and tooling support, of course, it's imperative. You got to have support if you want to print a good PCB, right? So,
well,
yeah.
I got news for you, Matt. I have never once used tooling pins, the magnetic ones, on a side 2 that had components on it.
No.
Well, here's the thing.
Just think of how much better your boards can be. We can only go up.
That's right. We only going up. But K and F, we only going up, baby. But here's the thing. Here's the thing, though. Daniel's claiming that his machine has a freaking laser that points to where to put the magnets.
Yeah, that is true. The upper camera can be configured with a laser, and then because he isn't lazy and loads the Gerber file, he can take advantage of that and drag and drop the tooling pins. That's probably not something you would know about, though, given your programming methods.
Okay, so I was ignorant to the fact, but can the SP700 do that?
I would have to look at yours specifically to see if you have the wiring for it.
I don't even want to do it. I just want to prove them wrong from now on ever. I'm going to be that guy. That's my new thing, dude. I don't run supports. Yeah. No supports on bottom side, right? Double side. It just doesn't happen. If you want that, go to Aurora Boardworks if you want that. Don't come to me.
Yeah, you just got big PCBs, man. We don't need support.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, also too, but he's got, I noticed on one of his pictures, he had only 2 clamps in his, and I got 4. Like,
Yeah, on 2 on one rail and 1 on the other.
Yeah.
So traditionally, if you run 23-inch by 23-inch frames,
mm-hmm.
Then you would want to use 1 foil clamp on each side because there's a possibility of interference when you have the stencil chase brought in. So it's not so much an issue if you take your time to set the stencil chase, but some customers are a little sloppy with it. So in the field, we'll usually set it up with 1 and 1. Also, if you're printing, smaller PCBs, say, 12 to 14 inches, but the printer is capable of going up to 24 inches in width. So in that case, you'd want to have 4 to get a proper clamp on there.
Would 4 help for not using tooling pins on the bottom?
I mean, you're probably catching more surface area of the board, but I would say it's only going to help if you have a board that exceeds that size.
Because they make it sound like there's no way I'd ever be able to make a functional board. They're like, oh my God, wow, he doesn't use underside tuning pins on double-sided assembly.
I would say, I mean, it comes down to the PCB thickness, and then how wide is your PCB. If it's, 1.6 millimeters and it's only, 6 or 8 inches wide, then you're not going to need support. Like if you're printing something that's, say, 15 or 18 inches wide, that'll sag a lot in the middle. It just all depends, I guess, on what you're making or what you're doing. And then also your job setup. Too. If you have your stuff set up proper and you're not exceeding the print pressure and not being, using really invasive, scraping into it and stuff, maybe you can get by a little bit there too.
Okay.
It's just a testament to how well you have stuff set up, Sean, and you're like a well-oiled machine there.
We're Detroit strong over here.
Okay. Sean, make sure to thank him. Thank Matt. Huge thanks to Matt Argus from Europlacer for joining us and sharing some of his expertise and definitely proving me right. Go ahead and thank him.
All right, brother. I'll talk to you.
All right. Have a good night, guys.
Bye.
Later.
So,
just in case you wondered if this was scripted, which nobody does, you can't script that.
It's a scripting. It's the worst writers. And go ahead.
No, but I mean, like, here's the thing, right? Like, I don't mind being an idiot, right? Like, so here's the thing, because let's say I am an idiot.
Yeah, great magic clip.
Let's say I'm an idiot in this situation. No, but just think about this, right? Like, all right, I'm an idiot. I didn't know about the lasers with the underpins, right? Now I do, right? So now I do, because I'm able to be okay being an idiot. I'm okay saying, hey, I don't do it that way. This is how I do it. And then somebody says, hey, this is how you could do it. But
well, that's why people like us.
That's exactly why they come, right? Because we're honest and we are who we are, and we hope that something comes up every episode that you can learn from. So we appreciate you all joining us this week, and we hope we'll catch you. We hope you'll catch us on the next episode of the Decode Podcast.
Till next time.